Welcome back to Let's Unpack That, a podcast where two fictional adults attempt to go through books that they read when they were kids in middle school and come up with good arguments and political and sociopolitical and literary criticisms of them based on our education, which is expensive and fabulous, so they tell us. That is Lydia.
That's Nina.
Welcome back, everybody. Happy 2020. Welcome to the new decade. Welcome to the new decade. I hope you all are doing well and looking forward to 2020 with some 2020 vision, as the memes would say. We're happy to be here. As part of our 2020 resolution, we actually came up with a recording schedule and a publishing schedule.
Feels so formal now.
I know, and we actually have a plan. We're even in the talks for the next season, so stay tuned. If you guys keep listening and you like it enough, we may just bring you another season. It'll be pretty great. Lydia, do you have any New Year's resolutions?
First of all, how could you spring this on me? We were talking for like 15 minutes before this.
Because I wanted your genuine response.
But you're not going to get a genuine response. You're just going to be, it's not going to be well thought out.
Well, that's the most genuine it is.
Okay, fine. So I don't have resolutions for the new year. I have goals. Goals! Oh. Sounds so official. This year, I'm going to finish the second draft of my novel. I'm gonna...
Okay.
Hold on, let me get my old planner in which I wrote these.
Did you get the new planner?
No, I didn't. I'm actually making my own.
Whoa.
So I'm using a journal that I already had.
It's like bullet journal style?
Kind of, but not. Like, I'm not at all using the bullet journal method. And I'm not really interested in doing that because, like, I can't do art for shit. And like I can't make pages look pretty. Like the extent that I've put any effort of design into these pages is highlighting the days of the week. That's
Excellent.
it.
Hey, that's a lot. Okay, but you're building your own planner, making it work for you. I like it. I support it.
I mean, I figured that I should finish the notebooks that I have. I mean, I don't think I need this much space anymore because the planner for 2019 was the big moleskin one. It's about the size of a page. And I was filling it up towards the beginning of the year because I had a lot to do and a lot to write down to do for my job. But now I'm not working at a desk. And so I don't need to write things down in a planner on the daily anymore. It's really just for me and for my own like tasks that I need to do on my own time. And so I think the smaller one is going to work. Let's see. My goals for 2020.
Da 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 da. Drum roll, please.
Finish the second draft of my book.
Applause,
Read
applause,
50
applause.
books.
Applause, applause,
Volunteer at either a library or a cat rescue. I can't decide.
Both. Applause, applause, applause.
Get allergy shots because I'm tired
Applause,
of being
applause.
freaking allergic to my cat.
I support these.
Maybe make some YouTube videos. I don't know.
What?
Yeah, I used to do that, and now I make like 1 or 2 a year. Anyway, that is separate from my quarterly goals of 2020.
So wait, recap. Those are the goals for the year.
Yes, for the entire year.
Okay, so now we're cutting it down to a quarter.
Yes.
Is this the fiscal quarter, the calendar quarter? How are we dividing these quarters?
January to March, calendar quarter. I don't know what a fiscal quarter is.
It's a finance term. I don't really know what it is either. I just thought I'd throw it in there.
You faker.
I know.
Using fancy terms you don't know what they are.
That is like 99% of being a political science major. I don't know what you're saying. Okay,
it's also
so
99% of being an English major, so that's fine.
Business, corporate, government, or individual fiscal calendars and planners are defined by the U.S. government starting on October 1st and ending on September 30th. Calendar covers a 12-month period and divided into 4 quarters. So a lot of times the government or the stock market might be divided up into those fiscal whatever. It's used by a government for accounting and budgeting purposes. Anyway, quarter. Here we go. Standard quarter. Let's go.
Yes. First quarter of 2020. Here are my goals. I also have habits that I want to make. I want to hit 40K in my new book that I'm writing. I want to visit you in Colorado.
Applause.
I want to start work on draft 2 of that aforementioned novel. I want to polish a short story so that I can submit it to magazines / people.
Did you say
to publish.
polish a short story or publish?
Polish in order to publish.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, because I have one sitting that has feedback on it from several of my peers and that I have not looked at since I sent it to them. So that's cool. Habits. It's important to form habits, but also gradually. So some of these are habits that I also had on my list last year, which is kind of not cool, but you know, we're all growing and improving all the time.
I like how you were all thrown off and like fucking bewildered, but you had them all written down like a bitch. Come on. Sorry.
Yeah.
Continue.
I just
I
had
knew
to
you
retrieve them from across the room.
I'm so sorry.
Also, you asked for resolutions, not goals. And resolutions are things like going to the gym, which, lol, I'm
But
not
that
gonna
could
do.
still be a goal. That could be a goal. And I feel I failed to see the difference. But continue, please, with your lofty goals.
Okay. The habits that I want to form in 2020. I want to read before bed instead of scrolling through social media. I want
those were
to
the days.
go for more walks. I want to eventually be writing every day. And I want to wake up before 9 a.m. even on my days off.
Wow. You know what that involves, right? Waking up before 9 a.m.
Yeah, I mean, I failed at that today. But also, to
That's
be
okay.
fair, I didn't sleep well.
It's all right. On Sunday morning, I woke up. I was watching my friend's horses and me in the man's TM, and he hates it when I call him that, but he is the man's with the Z TM. He and I had spent the night at my friend's house, and I got up to feed the horses the next morning, and then he and I went and got breakfast. And then I went home, got home around 10 in the morning, and slept until about 3 in the afternoon. So,
Nice.
that was my Sunday. We went to bed, I think, probably around 10 o'clock that night, the night before.
Nice.
It's not like we were up partying or anything. Like, we shared a can of cider between the two of us, and both of us just laid down and went to sleep. It wasn't like we were up doing crazy shit. We were like, we're tired, go to bed. And then I went home and went to bed.
I also feel like, though, you do a lot more than I do.
This is possible.
I mean, just thinking about it, I work 35 hours a week. You work overtime regularly, and it's mandated by your company. You also have a second job. You have a horse, so you're going to exercise like every day. I'm just like driving half an hour back and forth.
I also have a boyfriend that occasionally needs attention and a dog that actually we're in obedience training right now. So I have a whole new level of commitment that I'm making with my dog.
Yeah, and I have one friend who lives 2 hours away, and occasionally I see a cat that I can pet on my block.
That's okay. What would I do if I weren't slammed and completely busy and stressing myself out in the tune of Mallory when we were in our undergrad years? Really, who would I be?
Let me tell you, you'd still be tired.
Exactly. So what's the point?
Anyway, what are your goals for this year? /
Well,
resolutions?
I'm not as cool, so I have them down as 2020 resolutions. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I have a couple, and one of the big things is to be more disciplined with my time. And actually, part of that is being able to do this recording schedule, so that's awesome. I have a digital planner that I have that is synced up to my iPad and my phone. So I always have my planner with me. I never will be without it.
Yes.
And the nice thing is that on this digital planner, the pages are broken down monthly, and then I have weekly, and then I have daily. And the daily pages actually go hour by hour, which I always thought was really obnoxious and annoying. But now that I have it, it actually makes a lot of sense for me to block out time and say, okay, from 7 to 5, I'm going to be at work. Okay. After that, I'm going to go to the barn, and I'm going to leave the barn at 7:30, whatever. And I can actually block out chunks of time, and I have everything written down, and it's great, and I like it, and I appreciate it. One of my other resolutions is to go greener and be more cruelty-free. So I'm going to be utilizing my reusable bags. They are in my car because I have fallen out of the habit of using them. Ever since moving back to Colorado, because in California, those of you who don't know, they don't sell or provide plastic bags to people in grocery stores because plastic bags are bad. And for a long time while I was in school, I was really good about using my reusable bags, and then I fell out of the habit, haven't been doing it, felt really bad. To be fair, I do use the plastic bags. I do reuse them for kitty litter, but that's besides the point. So I'm going greener, trying to get more of the brands that I buy to be cruelty-free. I'm pretty good on my makeup so far. All of what I own now and use as far as my makeup, aside from my nail polish, is cruelty-free. And I'm going to try and move into more of the body care products and some of the cleaning supply products. I'm also hoping to stick to a budget. Ha, funny. And then probably one of the big ones that's really important to me, and I really hope I get to do this. I really want to take Jasper to a show. Those of you who live under a rock and don't know, Jasper is my horse. He is 5, and he is the love of my life. And
he's a baby
we're working really hard to train. And I'm very much hoping to actually take him to a show at some point, because I didn't get the chance to last year, my first year of owning him. And that doesn't even have to be a big rated show. I would just like to take him off property and take him to a show where we are judged by somebody who has not watched us work for the past year and a half and not die, I think would also be nice. I would like to add that I would like to take him off property to a show to be judged by someone else and not die.
Yep.
Which is very possible. So that one's pretty big, but I guess in terms of a habit that I am also trying to form, I want to start meditating.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's something that my therapist and I have talked about, because if you don't know and you can't tell, I run very fast and I am anxious 99.999% of the time. And I'm starting to pick up on the fact that I go so fast that I sometimes forget to do some things, or I'm so focused on moving on to the next task that I'll forget something that I'm doing in the present. A lot of that will involve leaving stuff at home that I'm supposed to be bringing with me, or making food like I did this morning. I made my breakfast sandwich and then left it in the microwave. That was sad. So trying to develop a practice of being a little bit more centered, being able to focus, and hopefully bringing down that anxiety to a notch. And I'd like to spend my time maybe 80% anxious instead of 99%.
Yeah.
But those are the ones that I'm really working on. Also, everybody, apparently we're going to war. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Maybe we'll podcast through the end of the world.
Yeah. So if anything has changed between now and this release date, right now it's currently January 8th. It's a Wednesday. Our president's a fucking moron.
But we all been new.
We all been new, and he's like, "Don't make me use this." And then Iran is like, "Well, we're gonna use this." And then President Fuckface over there is like, "Well, I'll get real mad if you do this." And Iran's like, "That's nice." So who knows where the world will be when this podcast actually drops, because it's a little scary right now. I'd really like to believe that we're not going to go into another war, a hopeless and pathetic war. And if you don't want to hear me get on my rant about how people who forget history will be doomed to repeat it, and those who are prideful will be brought down by their slightest weaknesses, and how that relates perfectly to our country, I would stop myself right now. Otherwise, we will be here for 3 more hours. In any case, hopefully the world will not be a crazy place when this drops. Future self, I hope you're doing well. And yikes.
Speaking of World War III, a possible result of World War III would be Pan Am.
What a great segue! Oh my god, I was wondering how you were going to do this. I'm like, she's going to bring it back to Hunger Games. I don't know how she's going to do it, but I'm going to let her do it.
Yeah, this is how it happens.
Okay, so in the future, high schoolers will listen to this podcast and say, wow, this is how we arrived at Pan Am.
Run away. Rebel.
Run away.
Start now.
Also, teenagers, it's going to be okay. You're doing fine. Just keep going. So, segueing into the book. We are doing chapters 7 and 8 today, and this is episode 4 of the Hunger Games. If you have not been listening and you don't know what we're talking about, you can definitely go back to a previous episode and listen to it. Or if you just like hanging out with us in somewhat real time, feel free to jump in and follow us around. So chapter 7 is where we're going to start today. I'll go ahead and give us a summary here if you'll let me, Lydia.
Yeah, go ahead.
So chapter 7, Katniss awakes after a night full of nightmares to her first day of training. Remember, she is on her way into the arena to battle out amongst the Hunger Games and battle to the death. So she eats a hearty breakfast, thinking about the meager amount of food that her mother and Prim back home are having and about what they would be doing right now. And she comes to find out that She and Peeta are wearing matching outfits, and she's very annoyed by it. They explain their skills to Haymitch. Katniss undervalues her shooting, and Peeta undervalues his wrestling and lifting. They sort of talk each other up, but it's also kind of backwards and under the, I don't know, it almost doesn't feel like a, hey, you're really great. It's more like, well, this guy knows how to.
Well, he's better. Well, she's better than I am. Well, he's better than I am.
It almost also seems like it's a little, I don't know, catty, I guess,
Yeah.
or like, yeah, kind of calling each other out. But at one point, they go down to the training center in the basement of the building that they're staying in, and they take some survival classes. Katniss, during that time, sizes up the other tributes, especially the careers, who are, again, the elite tributes from certain districts. I think it's 1, 2, and 4 that are rumored to have training academies for tributes and essentially, have most of the winners in history. Is it 1, 2, and 4? I think it is.
I want to say, yeah.
They're essentially the rich kids of the tribute pool who have the odds with them. And according to this pool here, from what she's noticing, she sees that they're obviously skilled at fighting because they've been trained, and a lot of them are a lot bigger than she is. We also meet Rue, the 12-year-old girl from District 11, who reminds Katniss of Prim and who shadows her throughout the training. And at the end of the training comes the individual evaluations. So all of the tributes have a chance to display their skills and be scored on them. And then that score is what is relayed back to the audience, because the actual training itself is confidential, but the score is essentially, it's their rating, seeing how they did in terms of their skill set that attracts sponsors to them. The higher you score, the more likely you are to get noticed and to have a sponsor send you something that could save your life in the arena. During this evaluation, though, Katniss gets mad at the game makers, for not paying attention to her shooting while she is working with her bow and arrow. So in retaliation, she shoots an apple out of a roast pig's mouth on their table to get their attention. My hero. TLDR, a lot happens in this chapter.
Yeah, I mean, we have the entire training in this chapter. That's a lot. These 2 chapters are the entire time that Katniss and Peeta are training together. After that, really, they have to split up. So there's a lot of getting to know each other, trying to stick together and to prove to the other people that they're a team, which is why they're in matching outfits. But also Katniss is secretly resenting Peeta, and they aren't quite sure what each other's motives are and if they're actually friends or if they're faking it to get ahead or what's going on there.
Well, we know that Katniss feels that way. I would say that we can't necessarily tell if Peeta doesn't trust her or if he is being genuine about his actions and his intentions and what he's saying. We're all seeing this from Katniss's point of view, who is like, I don't know if I trust you.
Right.
And we kind of get the idea that she thinks Peeta is being potentially, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Manipulative. There was another word I'm looking for, but manipulative works.
Disingenuous.
For some reason I thought it started with an F.
Fraudulent. He's putting up a facade.
I was going to say facetious, but I think that's more joking.
Yeah.
In any case, long vocabulary list of words here. We don't know how he's really, truly intending to behave. We just have that feeling from Katniss that she should not trust him.
Mm-hmm.
But I almost feel like it's written in such a way that we're supposed to see past what Katniss is thinking and kind of form our own opinion, right? Like, it almost feels like, because she kind of pauses it at times and goes, what does that mean? What is he talking about? We're kind of given the space to think, oh, what does he mean? What does he talk about? How is he being written? Are you following me here?
Yeah, in the space that Katniss thinks about what Peeta might mean and analyzes her situation, we're able to also analyze the objective parts of the conversation that she's relayed to us, like the direct dialogue of what Peeta says. We can analyze that for ourselves. And so we don't necessarily have to think that Peeta's actually doing what Katniss thinks that he's doing. We can, in a way, in these chapters, judge him on his own dialogue.
Right.
They show themselves to be quite alike at the beginning of here, because they're both hesitant to admit the usefulness of the skills they have. And it might be just because they're both cautious around each other, and at least that's Katniss's excuse. But also they're training together, and Katniss definitely doesn't give herself enough credit for what she can do.
Right. And neither does Peeta, because he says, oh, well, I can throw flour around, big whoop. But if you've ever picked up a 100-pound sack of anything, which is something I do frequently when I'm hauling grain back and forth to the barn, that shit's tough. That does involve a full body use of your muscles, right? So saying that he can throw flour around, oh yeah, sure, what am I going to do? Throw flour around? No, that's also demonstrating the fact that he is very strong, altogether strong, which is always an advantage.
Yeah, I mean, she talks so much about how big and strong the other tributes are, but even though Peeta is kind of small and squat, he is strong as well, and I think that's going to play into later when he runs with the careers.
Have we been given a physical description of, how tall he is? Because I didn't think he was that short. I remember him being described as broad, but
he's not
compared to the other careers
per se, but he's not a large man. He's
okay.
I mean, he's a boy. He's kind of medium height with a strong but slight build, so he doesn't necessarily look like ripped. So he's not stout.
I wonder how he looks compared to the careers. If he looks like he would fit in.
Oh no, he's definitely smaller.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I can imagine why. He comes from a much poorer district and is probably hasn't had the same amount of food. He was from the wealthier class, but definitely didn't have the same amount of food and training that they did. But height-wise or altogether stats, what does he look like compared to them?
And it's also like he was chosen by chance. They were chosen on purpose.
Right, exactly.
Anyway, Peeta obviously doesn't think that he's going to survive. He even says that his own mother thinks that Katniss is going to survive and that he won't. And that when she came to visit him to say goodbye, she was like, we actually have a chance this year, but she meant Katniss, not her own son, which is kind of like, ooh.
Can you imagine?
That hurts.
Like, why? Why would you say that?
Like, thanks for the vote of confidence, Mom.
Also, this is the last time you may see me. And if you believe that Katniss is going to win, then you think this is the last time you're going to see me. Why? I don't know. Problematic mothers, join the club.
Yeah, I mean, we already know that she was not the best mother and she was abusive. I mean, she beat him after he burnt the bread.
But then I think that begs the question, what is special about Katniss?
Yeah.
Why do they think she's going to win?
Yeah. And this is where I kind of went into YA-ness of the story. Because, like, earlier in this scene with when they're talking to Haymitch, Peeta says she has no idea the effect she can have. Like, what effect are we talking about there? She's closed off, she's intimidating, but like, what teenager isn't sometimes? But what jumps out about her that makes her different, that makes her worthy of being a protagonist and eventually a hero?
What makes her different, TM?
Yeah, what makes her different, TM? Like how we were talking about in Twilight. Vampires can't read Bella's mind, they can't have a supernatural effect on her. That's what makes her special. But what about Katniss? She doesn't have anything supernatural about her. The biggest thing that she's done in her life is survive with pure grit. But what is extraordinary about her?
You could argue that survival in her is the extraordinary part of it, but I don't even think she sees herself as being extraordinary for surviving as long as she did. Yeah.
And I don't think because of that we are meant to see her as extraordinary just for surviving. Because there are plenty of other starving families in the seam, and like Gale survived.
Right.
How is she different from him?
We're not given an outside perspective of how people see her.
Right. And all of the impressions that people give of her are very vague and meant to call out, hey, you need to be more of this so that you can get sponsors. You need to be more of that. You need to be like this, instead of what you are on the surface, never really addressing who she is deeply.
Right, exactly. We kind of figure it out along with Katniss, with what people see in her.
Yeah.
And why she's been chosen for this. And she's oblivious to it for most of it, and I think we are too. Intentionally so.
Yeah. Thinking about what makes Katniss a young adult heroine, I think part of it has to do with her father. Because, I mean, like we were talking about in Twilight, the parental absence or the absence of meaningful adults having influence on their kids' lives is a big point in YA stories from this time, like a lot of YA stories.
Right.
It allows the kids to be independent while also giving an excuse for why they aren't trusting adults with their problems. And I don't know what else.
It's something, you know. He goes, she has no idea the effect that she has. Why is that? Is it physical, like her appearance? She's so pretty or breathtaking. Well, she's
Not
described as
really.
not being that. So
Yeah,
we
she's
have
not
to rule that out.
exceptional.
And she's kind of a bitch. So aren't we like, granted, it could be taken well that she's kind of headstrong and stubborn and speaks her mind. That could be admirable, especially in the scene where people are so beat down. But even then, when she was in the scene and when she was working within the Hob and you know, she was still following the rules. It wasn't like she was an outspoken rebel or trying to change anything. She was trying to keep her head down and just keep her family alive and keep herself alive. So I'm starting to even wonder what is really special about Katniss that is making her so compelling to all of these people, to Peeta, to Haymitch, to the sponsors, to her prep team. What is it that's bringing them in? And the more that I'm thinking about it and the more that we've been talking about it, I really don't know.
I guess we could think about it like, what is it that attracted us as young girls to the character of Katniss? What did we see in her that we admired that made us want to, like, go as her for Halloween or braid our hair in that way? Like, I'm calling myself out, definitely. But what made us want to be like that and want to see the movies and want to, like, invest ourselves so deeply in this character? And I mean, part of it is bow and arrow is cool.
I thought she was strong and independent and a badass because she didn't really give a shit what people thought.
Yeah, independent badass. And I think a combination of having the teenage conflict of having so much love for people and so much hatred for the world.
Right.
Simultaneously, and having that just constantly churning inside of Katniss was really relatable to us at the time. And I mean still. Because Katniss is who she is because of her family. By herself, she might not have survived because she didn't have a little sister to motivate her to go looking for food. And, like, she didn't have a father to disappear, to leave them all in a lurch. But in combination with the people that she loves and the system that she hates, she is very relatable.
Huh. I like that thought.
I'm coming up with this all just on the fly.
And I'm very
I didn't
impressed.
write any of this down.
I know, and I'm impressed about it, and I honestly, I don't have a follow-up. Who can top that? That's the podcast, everybody. Have a good night.
No, we still have to talk about a lot of stuff.
I know. No, that's good. And I think it's important to go back to what we were thinking when we were kids, because isn't that the whole point of the podcast? But also it really does kind of show what we were looking at when we were young and looking at this with fresh eyes, what we loved so much about Katniss and the story. So well done, Lids. Gold star for you.
Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome.
My first gold star of the year.
First gold star of the decade, baby.
Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah.
So do you think she's right to be suspicious of Peeta?
I don't know. Obviously, Peeta has been paying attention to her the way she's paying attention to him, both before they were chosen as tributes and now that they're in the Capitol together. Katniss even admits that to herself. Hey, she's kept track of the boy with the bread, the way that he kept track of her, which is kind of playing at a genuine relationship moving forward. I don't know if I would necessarily go to the level of she was crushing on him, the way that he may or may not have been crushing on her.
Oh, we're gonna talk about that.
That's the next episode. Anyway, it's one of those things where they've been on each other's radar, and she's kind of surprised to admit that to herself. At that same point, she's still saying, okay, I have to keep an eye on him. I think her exact quote on page 93 is, I have kept an eye on the boy with the bread. So she also, as we were saying, she doesn't see herself as remarkable, even though Peeta apparently does. And I have to wonder, is it one of those she's beautiful and she doesn't know it tropes, or is it point of pride? And truly, we have no idea what Peeta's intentions are. And I think we've kind of covered that. We're just so limited by her point of view. I think, first of all, she has a lot of wounded pride that she doesn't share with the readers and won't even really share to herself. I think she's really ashamed of the position where she had to accept help at all, way back when she had to accept help from Peeta. She feels like she owes him now. And especially since they are now fighting each other in the games, I think she feels even more shame for that. She's very prideful. We can't argue the fact that she has a lot of points to herself that she is very proud of and also does not want to be wounded. That is part of her character. Not necessarily to a flaw to any extent, but it also, shows that she, does have buttons that would be pushed, and that she's going to be limited by her own perceptions because she is so busy trying to protect herself in this way and protect her pride and protect her physical self and protect her emotional state. So really, we have no idea what Peeta's intentions are. We talked a little bit about how, as the reader, we have a chance to kind of dig into what he says and how he behaves at the same way that she's looking at it. And I'm sure as teenagers, if you remember, there was Team Peeta and Team Gale. Everyone had all of this, just commotion about what Peeta really was thinking. But we have no confirmation of that. We can assume based on how the series goes, but really we're just as clueless as Katniss is. So it's a great question. Is she is still suspicious of Peeta? Yes, but is she rightly so? And, is he really the lovesick bastard that he's often portrayed as in the books and in the movies and fan fiction, where he's just hopelessly in love with Katniss and would do anything for her? And that's a very easy characterization to make. I think that's certainly plausible. Depending on how far into his character that Collins went, that could just very well be the case on the surface that he's been in love with her this whole time. He's going to do what he can to keep her alive. End of story, which is noble in its own way. And if that's his character arc, then absolutely. But we could also argue that maybe there is more to Peeta. What do we not see and what do we not infer that could be potentially true? How deep does this character arc really go? So to answer your question, that is a resounding and long-winded, I have no idea.
Yeah. I think that's one of the pitfalls of first-person present, is that you can't really get to know other characters to the extent that an author would typically like to describe them. It's a very limited perspective, and Katniss is, in a way, very limited in her thinking. And I think what you were saying about her maybe not being herself to a point of it being a flaw, I think she is prideful to a flaw, because she is so determined to be self-reliant that she doesn't want help. She doesn't want anybody's pity. She doesn't want anybody to look at her as anything less than a fully independent, capable person. And I think that's one of the reasons why she resents Peeta, is because he is a symbol of her lowest point when she had to ask for help.
I really feel like you're calling me out right now, because I'm like, well, that's not a point of pride. That's what I do. That's not a fault. That's what I do. Wait. Hang on. But no, I agree with everything that you just said. Do you remember when, I don't know, maybe this was just me, but when I was writing more often and creating my own stories, and then when I was reading more fan fiction, but then also just fiction in general, picking up new books at the library, I actually used to really dislike third-person point of view. I loved first person. Most of the stories that I wrote were in first person. A lot of the fan fiction I read was in first person. A lot of the stories that I picked up were first person. I liked that point of view a lot better. Did you ever have a favorite?
Yeah, I mean, to this day, most of my short stories are in first person, but like the novel that I'm working on, that I mentioned earlier in this episode, it's in third person, and pretty sure it's going to stay in third person. I think, especially when you're young, and like this is a characteristic of YA lit, first person is just so relatable and so immediate that it's so useful to the genre.
Right.
Because you want the characters to be so immediate and relatable to the kids who are reading it, because that way they keep reading and they keep being intrigued. And it's a really effective way to keep people in a story if everything is happening moment by moment in the present in first person. I don't think any one perspective is less valuable than another. I think it all depends on the way you use it.
Right.
And the way your story works within it.
I would agree.
Like, some stories will work well in some perspectives and others don't.
Could you imagine Twilight in a third-person perspective?
You wouldn't be able to finish it.
It would be weird. And I don't think there's one that's better over the other either. I remembered really enjoying first person and almost to a point of actively avoiding any other, third party or third person perspectives at all, because I didn't want it. And then at one point that flip-flopped and I only wanted third person. And now I read a lot of memoirs, which I think really feeds that need for first person perspective. But it also, my tastes have broadened. But I do remember a point in my time just really wanting to only read first person and really connecting to that kind of narration. So
it's like the way that the narration is used in each of these stories is just slightly different, but it all matters.
I love books.
Yeah, me
I
too.
love them so much. Let's talk about throwing a bunch of kids together to kill each other. Yeah, and feel like men again. Huh. Go for it.
Never undervalue the importance of proper nutrition. There is so much about food in these two chapters, and there's almost nothing about food in the movies.
Oh, shit.
We'll talk about this later, but I watched all of the movies in between recording our last episode and this one, and, like, there was no food in the movies. Like, we never see Katniss scarfing down anything aside from that bread in the first scene that she, like, savors because it's bakery bread with Gale.
Oh my god. I
But
totally didn't make that connection.
here, so many scenes, like, she's just filling her plate with stew and vegetables and bread and everything, and just eating serving after serving because she's so underfed, and she's probably never been full in her life, or at least since her dad died. And, like, I understand why they couldn't do that in the movies. You'd fill, like, a huge spit bucket by the end of the day, and it would be disgusting. But I know that this was one of the main complaints of people complaining about the Hunger Games movies, was like, there's no hunger.
Yeah.
Like, we see a bunch of poor people. In the beginning scene, we see somebody, like, gnawing on the scraps of chicken bones. But other than that, like, Katniss is very well fed. She's not scrawny at all, which, like, Jennifer Lawrence shouldn't, no actor should have to, like, starve themselves or dehydrate themselves for a role.
But a lot of people had a big problem with that because they felt like she was very round-faced and didn't properly portray Katniss. Whereas I think around the same time that the Hunger Games came out, we had Les Mis with Anne Hathaway, who lost, I don't even know how much weight to be Fantine.
Like 30 pounds at least. But it was, like, unhealthy of her to do that.
Was it? Because I mean, obviously it was, but I could have sworn that I read that she had been working with a doctor and, you know, and obviously it wasn't something that she intended to keep herself that small. It was for the role, which I think some people were pissed at Jennifer Lawrence for not wanting to embrace that role more. And then at one point she's like, I shouldn't have to change my body. And I was one of the people that was like, well, it fits in with the character that you would be starving, as someone who is very literal and, you know, also as any person does who has a picture of how a character looks in their mind. I was kind of mad that Jennifer Lawrence was playing this character and that she seemed like she was so above any of the Hollywood whatever because she didn't starve herself. I'm like, oh, look how cool I am. I'm not starving myself. But I'm getting off topic. But yeah.
There's always food on the tables in the scenes that we see, but she's never, like, looking at them, or, like, there's no emphasis on, oh, this is special. This is special to have so much food. Like, she's never in awe of the amount of food there is, which I think at least could give that same vibe without having her starve herself for a while.
Right. And not only that, but they also introduce all the different kinds of bread and food from the different districts that they've never been exposed to before.
Right.
So it's like bringing it all together.
Yeah. I think that's why the books are a lot more, kind of in a way, more graphic than the movie.
Yeah.
There are some things that you definitely can only do on a page that you can't do in a movie, but I think they could have explored other ways to do it.
I would agree. We could go to town about ripping this movie to shreds, but...
I mean, and I will later. Because I watched all of them.
You will have your chance, Guido. You will have your chance.
Yes.
And also, when they bring all the districts together, in this chapter, this is the first time all the tributes are together in a way that they have, I wouldn't say freedom, but they're not being paraded down and choreographed in a way that they have to act a certain way. Starting in the middle of this chapter is when we see all of the tributes together, they're training together, and they are sizing each other up. And what I really wanted to know, I really like relating things back to real life. And the thing that I was trying to focus on was is there anything similar to this that we see in reality TV or anything like that? The only thing that I could really think of was Survivor. My parents and my brother love Survivor. They watch it religiously. And it's a show that has similar stakes where you are competing for survival in the game. You know, like you're competing for not only winning, but you know, certain challenges will have rewards of like food banquets or like shelter or just some kind of perk that like pushes you forward, kind of like the sponsorship does. Obviously, this is a reality show and there are doctors on site and they're, and if anyone's actually going to get sick and have some kind of medical emergency, they're going to be removed from the show. So it's not even close to what the Hunger Games looks like, but that was the most similar thing I could kind of look into. And I also thought what was interesting is that the Survivor show, it does little character bios, the way interviews are done by Caesar Flickerman in the books and in the movies. And then also in the same way the training scores are rated for the tributes, we kind of get an overview of what the person does. I actually just went on CBS.com and pulled up a couple of the Survivor character bios. So there's one man, his nickname is Boston, I guess is Rob Mariano, and he lists the seasons that he's been on before. He's on some kind of all-star, all-season winner. And they ask him questions like, what specific accomplishments do you think ultimately earned you the moniker of idol when it comes to Survivor? And he goes on to say, I've seen the evolution of the game, and I'm proficient in the social component, the physical component, and the strategic psychological component. He kind of gets into the idea of like, here's what I know best to do, and here's what I know to do to win, which is similar to how, okay, here's the score that I've made in this training. I am a deadly killer, and you will do well by sponsoring me. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I also thought of was an ex of mine introduced me to a video series on YouTube, and it was called Brute Showdown Ladies Edition, and it was pretty cool. It was where women of several different trainings, such as CrossFit, bodybuilding, some kind of sport like soccer or something like that, weightlifting, they compete against each other in different sports arenas, right? So they kind of go head to head in a completely different setting than when they're normally competing. And they have a chance to kind of demonstrate their own skills at the beginning of the web series. And then they come together to compete in different tasks like soccer, sprinting, balance, whatever. And eventually one of them who does the best overall is crowned the winner. Obviously, nothing is ever going to be at the same. I need to stop saying, obviously, it's not going to be the same as the Hunger Games. Nothing will be. But in the same way of their skills are being tested in a new setting that they've never been exposed to before, or at least don't have a lot of experience being exposed to, and then being judged and evaluated on that skill level and how that helps them. As far as feminist girl power, they're all really nice to each other, which I think is nice. They're not like trying to tear each other down. They're like, yeah, that's awesome. They seem like they vibe, which is nice. But, it's along that similar line of they're trying to display their own skills and come out to be the best overall. Speaking of sports, another segue. Look how good we are at this. I kind of wanted to touch on a little bit of fact of Katniss and Peeta being dressed alike. Katniss notes that they are the only two that are dressed similarly to suggest that they're in a team. All of the other tributes are kind of, it's whatever, they're thrown together. But for whatever reason, Cinna and Portia and Haymitch and Effie have said, okay, we're going to put them together as a team. So I thought it would be fun to go into the history of uniforms. Ooh. Yeah. So I Googled history of uniforms. Wow. And I came upon an article from theathleticshop.com, and it had just a little blurb about team uniforms. And actually, teams really didn't wear uniforms until the New York Knickerbockers took the field on April 4th of 1849. I think that's a baseball team, and that's when they essentially, yeah, I didn't do that much research. I'm not that cool, but essentially that's the first time we see a team coming together wearing something that unifies them. You never see a team competing without a uniform. Even, PE, we used to get those little colored penny jerseys things that we would have to wear that always smelled disgusting. And the uniform has a couple of different things. And you see this also in the military as well. The identity is a big part of it. So there's the identity of the team. It distinguishes them between the other teams. So it's an idea of us versus them. Katniss and Peeta versus the other tributes. It also says it's a little bit more of identity, unity, and then equality, which I thought was a neat thing to touch on. If you put everyone together in the same clothes, competing for the same goal, no individual is more important than the other. Everyone's working together as a unit, teamwork. That I thought was really kind of interesting to touch on, because not only are we seeing this identity and this unity and this supposed equality between Peeta and Katniss, but I kind of wanted to say, kind of wanted to look into the idea, could we argue that this is all for the sake of selling a story and selling a storyline to the sponsors?
Definitely.
Well, but here's the thing. I wouldn't be that surprised if Haymitch isn't also thinking about rebellion, or Cinna and Portia aren't thinking about some kind of stirring the pot making waves in a way. I'm sure Haymitch is thinking of rebellion in some form and fashion because he's already made clear that he hates the Capitol, right? He wants to give them a big middle finger, which he does most of the time. So he's definitely trying to sell the story of an early alliance, a team from District 12 to get their story out there. But really, could we argue that that's a good selling point? Because if things were going to go to plan, however their story ends, either both of them will be dead or one of them will be victorious, you know, and that would bring a lot of attention and sponsorship. And I think that's definitely his hope that they're, oh my gosh, they're going to be a team. What are they going to do once they're in the arena? Are they going to turn on each other? Are we going to do this? Who's going to die? Who's going to live? Are they both going to die? It does create a buzz, but I could almost say, hey, could we argue that maybe this is just the very early, to the point of starting to dig in the dirt, kind of foundation laying for what will eventually become the rebellion and the Mockingjay and the girl on fire? Is this just the small little middle finger? Or is it really for selling a great story?
Yeah, one more thing to consider here, actually two more things. The trainings are private, so the sponsors aren't going to see that they're matchy-matchy.
Exactly.
It's just this show of uniformity is for the other tributes and for the game makers.
And for the game makers.
Specifically. And also, another aspect of uniforms is that you can look at it as they create unity, but on the flip side, they also destroy individuality. They are no longer Katniss and Peeta, they are District 12.
Right.
They are one entity, no longer two people.
What would the point of that be? From a political standpoint, what is the point of having them be AT when they're only going to ultimately be destroyed? Is Haymitch just really bad at creating a selling point, or is he a genius because it's so different? Why have them be District 12 versus Katniss and Peeta? I don't know.
I don't know either.
Also kind of interesting, going back to the symbolism of the types of bread that are in the basket when they're eating dinner. They're all together. It's unity, but only to be destroyed, because then they're going to eat all the bread and then the bread's gone. And then there's no more districts. I'm very tired.
The tributes are merely pieces of bread to be consumed by the Capitol.
Panem!
Nom nom nom.
I need a vacation.
Also in this chapter, though, we meet Rue, and we're going to talk about her later, but we're setting up the whole comparison between her and Prim for relevance later in the arena.
Katniss just has a protective nature about her, and that definitely comes into play with Rue later on in the book. And then Katniss beautifully, I mean, I wouldn't even call this friend zoning. This is more like, hey, just so you know, I don't actually like you. She essentially tells Peeta not to pretend that they're friends when no one else is around to see. So kind of saying, hey, you don't have to pretend like you like me when no one's watching us. Ow.
Yeah.
And it's clear by now that he actually wants to be friends, I think. She's clearly faking it, but, you know, I think the idea that we're supposed to take away is he was not, or at least he's to the point where he thought that there was actual friendship forming.
Poor Peeta.
Oh, Peeta.
Want to talk about the most important and badass moment in this chapter?
Oh my God, yes, I do. It comes with the ultimate line. It comes with the ultimate just moment of righteousness. In the movie, it was beautiful. In the book, it's even better. It's like perfection. And that would be during the moment of the evaluation with the game makers.
So the evaluation gives the tributes a score from 1 to 12 based on their performance in the individual evaluations.
1 to 12, just like the districts.
Again.
Dun dun.
Yeah, they like the number 12. And at the point that Katniss gets into the room, she's second to last. The game makers are already not paying attention. They're tired. They've watched, 10 little kids.
More than 10. It's more like 20 or 22.
Oh, right.
There are 2 of them each. Hey, that's why neither of us were math majors. It's fine.
Speak for yourself. I got a 5 on both calculus AP
I know,
tests.
and you make a point to tell me every time.
Yeah, that's my excuse for being bad at math now.
Being bad at math now because you're
simple
out of practice?
addition.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm too advanced.
You're too advanced, and you used all of that brain power getting that 5 on the damn AP test. Hey, I got a 5 on the AP psych test. which I was super proud of because I think I was pulling low A's in that class the whole year, and I was definitely panicked because
low A's.
yeah,
atrocious.
Well, it was according to my parents and to myself, but also because the teacher kept on saying, "Oh my God, it's going to be so much harder than this, and you're going to need to get this. It's going to be worse when you're doing it in your test." And then I got a 5, and I was like, "Yo, what up? Looks like I'm smart." And then I got a 2 on my stats test, so that's fine. I am not a math major. Numbers are stupid.
So anyway, 22 kids have gone through there.
Not 10, 22. A whole 10, 22 kids.
Jeez. 22 kids. She's the 23rd.
Oh, we're keeping this in the podcast, by the way. I will not let this be published without that whole exchange being kept in here.
Oh, fine, but I have editorial control. We say this every time.
I know, and you listen to me anyway.
Yeah, because I can't be biased.
No.
Anyway,
we're good.
This last scene, this is a yearly event for the game makers, so they don't bother with it anymore, I guess. And they're too focused on their food and their new roast pig to pay attention to the tributes, even though it's a yearly event for them, but it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing for these kids. And they don't respect that.
And not only is it a once-in-a-lifetime thing for the kids, it's the moment that could save their life moment for the kids. Right? So, like, it's not even just once in a lifetime, like, this is the only time I'm going to show it. Like, this will literally play a huge factor and probably determine whether or not they will die in the next 48 hours.
Yeah. They don't respect the lives of these kids. They don't respect that they have control over their life and death. And I think to an extent they can't look too closely or else they'll see the ethical flaws in their own system and how cruel they are.
I think that's giving them a lot of credit.
I mean, I think that's where we get by the end of the series, is giving humanity to the capital people, but we're certainly not there now because these are the obvious villains.
Right.
Yeah, Katniss shoots her arrow into the apple that's in the mouth of the roast pig and says,
Thank you for your consideration.
And mic drop.
Mic drop!
Boom. End of chapter 7.
I will never not love the vine of Elizabeth Bennet tearing the shit out of Darcy when she's like,
"You are the last man I could
awful
ever be
and
prevailed
terrible,
upon to marry.
and you are the last man on earth that I would ever think to marry." And then it's the vine that goes, "Turn down for what?" And you just hear the rest of the people going, "Oh," I love that. I'm making my own remix as we go. Thank you for your consideration.
Turn down for what?
You're literally just clicking on different tabs. Oh my god.
There we go. Dylan could make it better and posted. That's what happens. Man. Okay, chapter 8. I read the last summary. It is your turn.
Okay, chapter 8, finally. In the aftermath of the individual evaluation, Katniss regrets everything and spends an hour crying in her room.
That's also everything that happened to me in high school in one sentence.
Woo!
What?
Yikes. That's a yikes moment. But she worries that the game makers are going to punish her family for her showing them up like that. And then finally, Effie calls her to dinner and she goes, and Haymitch and Peeta are like, "This isn't going to make them punish your family. This is secret. Nothing's going to happen." And so this makes Katniss feel a little bit better. And then Effie also gets in and says that the game makers had no right to ignore her, even a tribute from District 12. They're supposed to watch everyone. It's their jobs. So they find out the scores, and Katniss got an 11. Wow. And Peeta got an 8.
Aww.
Which is still decent. So Katniss returns to her room and thinks of Gale, and she recalls how they met and became friends. And the next morning at breakfast, Haymitch tells her that Peeta wants them to train separately instead of together. End of chapter 8.
Well done.
Lots of teen angst in this chapter. Man. When else have we seen Katniss storm off to her room and cry for an hour?
We don't. To be fair, I think I would cry for more than an hour too if I thought my family was in danger because of something I did. But we could also harken that up to teenage angst. What I also really love about this moment is on page 103 of the edition that we're both reading here. Katniss even says, I wasn't trying to kill one of them. If I were, they would be dead. It's a pretty assertive moment of confidence, and she does recognize that she has this lethal skill, as Peeta said, but it's kind of one of those moments where it's muted because she's going through all of these emotions, thinking that she's just like ruined her family's life by ending her family's life. But it does show a moment of like, oh shit, she does recognize that she has this capability and that she is good at what she does. I really loved that. I was reading that and I actually stopped and went back and was like, oh shit, this is one of the first times that she's really said, if I wanted them dead, if I wanted to do this, I would. Even though she's so horrified by herself, this is actually like one of the most confident things she says about herself.
This was an accident, but also this was very much on purpose.
Yeah, like in terms of I wouldn't even say accident. I think she's regretting the fact that she didn't think it through, and now she thinks that she's gotten her family killed. Right. But she's also telling herself, I could have killed them if I wanted to. I also really love that Effie speaks out against the methods of the game. That's a little bit later on page 107. That's kind of the very beginning of her character arc, and she even says, just because you're from District 12 doesn't mean they should ignore you. And then she immediately apologizes. She's like, oh, I'm sorry, that's just what I think. Almost like she's afraid to give her own opinion, which we see time and time again in situations of maybe an abusive situation or someone who's trying to just stay out of trouble, saying like, oh, well, like immediately apologizing for what they've said or trying to cover up what they've said and being like, oh, of course I didn't mean it like that. But she actually says, no, just because you're from District 12, regardless, they should be paying attention to what you're trying to do and trying to prove. So I really liked that moment too.
Yeah, that was definitely a part that struck me too, because Effie's like, she says oh, I'm sorry, that's just what I think. It's to cover her own ass in case there are microphones, just like everybody covers whenever they say anything that could be vaguely interpreted as against the Capitol, because they don't have freedom of speech like we established. I do like what is happening with Effie here. And with that, I go into my full review of the last movie. I don't know, when was this? A month, 2 months ago? After we recorded the last episode of 2019 and before we were recording this one, I watched all the movies. Yeah. I think I'd watched the first one before we recorded the last episode, but the other 3 I watched in between. I had seen the second one before, but I hadn't seen any part of Mockingjay. I liked what they did with Effie, giving her more of an arc and like having her be part of the rebellion and having her like show that she genuinely cares for Katniss. I think that was very heartwarming, but everything else, like I almost didn't cry in the last movie, if you can believe that.
Wow.
And I cry in every movie.
Yes. I too also loved Effie's character, just throwing that out there. I really did love that too.
And I think I really liked what they did with Effie because she treats Katniss like a person. And at the beginning of the series, she's treating her kind of like a prop, but she grows into seeing Katniss as a person who has thoughts and feelings and who has gone through some really bad shit, and she truly cares about that. She views the kids as people and almost as her kids. So I thought the Mockingjay part 2 was bad. Sorry, not sorry. Partly because that damn last scene, the last scene of the series, I hate it, even in the books, because it seems like the whole past has been erased.
Right.
And like nothing ever happened to Katniss, and so she's just gone on continuing the cycle of being her mother in a way. Like she even dresses like her mother does.
Yeah.
Like when you see her originally, that was so weird to me.
Oh, yes.
Hated the animation of the lizard mutts in the sewers. I thought they were supposed to be like alligators. Instead, they're like Gollum fish.
Yeah.
Not scary. It was just gross. Prim's death definitely didn't hit as hard as I thought it should. That was the part where I expected to be sobbing and was like barely tearing up. I think that moment was really when this whole thing solidified for me that this entire series is about adults not thinking of kids as people, thinking about them rather as pawns to be used for the purposes of adults and to hurt adults. And the fact that both sides, the Capitol and the rebels, saw kids that way as pawns to be used to hurt others effectively did make it clear how evil Alma Coin is. But the rest of it was just so awkward. Katniss is a blank slate. She has no character. There's no development in those last two movies. And we never see anything, any indication that she is going to become a woman who ends up married to Peeta and having babies. Like, there's no hint of that, I thought.
Yep.
Like, the most important thing to her that we've already seen in this book and in this scene is her family.
Yeah.
She wants to be back with her family. She wants them to survive and to be okay. And that just goes away
Yeah.
for the last two movies, except for the point where she's worried that Prim won't make it into the safety zone when they're bombing District 13.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only sisterly family love moment that we get from them pretty much in the rest of the series.
Yeah.
And then her mom is absent after that. Who knows where her mom is?
Who knows? No one knows. Does anyone know? No.
So that's my spiel about the movies. I'm still fine with the first two, but I don't like how they ended it.
I also felt the same way, where it was kind of like, oh, I don't know. I didn't like the way they did Prim's death scene. You didn't really realize what happened. You were supposed to kind of
for
be...
half a second, you didn't even know that.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's supposed to kind of be in the living it with Katniss, I think, is how they were trying to make it play out. But, you know, like, you didn't really even realize that Peeta, goodness gracious, I need a nap. Prim was there until like 2 seconds before the blast happened.
It's just so unclear who's giving the orders at that gate also.
Right.
Like, is President Snow telling them to pass the kids forward? Is somebody else doing that?
Right.
Like, what is going on?
Right.
Who is telling them what?
Right. Exactly.
And at first, that's why, like, I knew from reading that Alma Coin was responsible for killing the kids, but at first I thought that President Snow killed his own people.
Right.
It was not clear.
And that was I think that was supposed to be it. Like, it was supposed to be not totally clear.
Oh, I thought it was definitely supposed to be clear.
Oh. I mean, I guess I thought it wasn't meant to be initially clear until she speaks with President Snow, but...
Oh, right.
Right.
She doesn't completely believe President Snow at that point. He's just confirming what was already in
what
her
was
thoughts,
her suspicion anyway.
Yeah, she was already suspicious. She was already kind of churning it over, being like, okay, I think maybe this is what happened, and he just confirms her suspicions and everything goes to shit.
Right. Drama.
Anyway, gosh.
Katniss realizes her family is safe. No real harm has been done. As we'll say time and time again, she just wants her family to survive this. Not even really wanting herself to survive, but she wants her family to survive. And actually, now that I'm rereading this, because I just watched Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix with my boyfriend a couple nights ago, and we learned about the prophecy between Voldemort and Harry Potter, where neither can live while the other survives. It's kind of the same idea here, where the other's survival means our own death, which is what she says in page 112. I don't know, just a little nerd moment there. Like, it's the prophecy. It's the same idea, where neither of them can survive if the other one also survives, according to the rules of the games. I'm just going to geek out quietly about that connection that I just made on the spot. And just really love the fact that I don't know.
Yeah, so one last thing, and then we'll be done for the night, and you can go to sleep.
Yay.
Let's talk about Gale. And Katniss's relationship with Gale, because at the end of this chapter we have a lot of description of him, from what he was like when they first met and how they first met, to how they became friends and developed as people into hunting partners and friends, and how they got to where they were on the last day before she went off to the Hunger Games.
Right.
Gale is really important, like oddly important, for like not being present in most of the book. Like, I don't think we see him again.
No, we don't.
We learned that they met in the woods. She was like 12 or something, and she was hunting, and he taught her how to make snares so that she could have a guaranteed catch of rabbits and small game. And he was already supporting his family, so he basically took her under his wing. They're also a couple years apart. In this, she's 16 and he's 18.
Right.
She says on page 112, being in the woods with Gale, sometimes I was actually happy. And this is the only time that we ever see Katniss really having any happiness in her life, because the rest of her life is just stress and survival. And Gale is her happy place.
You could argue that he's the one that she loves. You know, if you wanted to make it a whole of who does Katniss actually love thing, my money would be on Gale.
Yeah, which is why definitely there was like the whole Team Peeta, Team Gale. I was on fucking Team Katniss.
Well, aren't you cool?
Yeah, once again, breaking the norms of team shipping. But Katniss knows that it's not fair to compare them at this point, and I think we as audience members also should. I think it was kind of a stretch to turn it into a love triangle, and that was definitely like less of a thing in the movies.
Oh, so, well, I would say it was more of a thing in the movies, because it kept on showing pouty Gale being like, they're kissing, I'm upset.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I guess. But since we didn't see as much of Gale.
Yeah.
And didn't really get to know him at all in the movies. Like, what did we know about Gale in the movies? Other than that he was her hunting buddy.
And he pouts.
Nothing.
Right.
Yeah, we don't know anything about his personality. We barely see his sense of humor. But in the books, we get a slight bit more. But also, on page 112, Katniss says, I can't help comparing what I have with Gale to what I'm pretending to have with Peeta. How I never question Gale's motives while I do nothing but doubt the latter's. It's not a fair comparison, really. Gale and I were thrown together by a mutual need to survive. Peeta and I know the other's survival means our own death. How do you sidestep that? And so she recognizes that, like, they're different people, they're different situations, she can't compare them, and yet the love triangle forces us to compare them.
Right.
And I hate that.
People were making a romance novel out of something that was just not. I think that's almost part of why I grew so distant from Hunger Games after a while, is because they were just making it a lot of a romantic thing.
And in a lot of ways, the capital people are making it into a romance.
Exactly.
We as readers have tended to do the same thing that the capital people do, which is like almost fetishize the relationships and the love triangle in this story. I mean, I remember thinking, oh, the irony when they announced that they were making a movie of the Hunger Games. Because it's like, well, we're gonna watch a bunch of kids kill each other, and even though it's not real, like, what makes us better than the capital people who also watch it for enjoyment? It's kind of ironic, is it not? But in the same way, it's like, well, none of this is fair.
Right.
It's not fair to the characters what the audience does, and it's not fair to them what the capital does either. But hey, we were teens.
We can just go ahead and put so many comparisons on that. We will be here for another hour.
Yeah.
I think that kind of, I mean, I don't know. I hit the end of my, see, I can't even speak anymore, which just goes to show that I've hit the wall and my mental faculties have left for the evening. So I'm going to call it here before this gets even more embarrassing. But do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I think that was everything.
Great, cool.
We didn't do as much research this episode because it was very plot heavy rather than like symbolism heavy.
Yeah.
So
that's okay. It doesn't always need to be research heavy. But we will post some of the links that we quoted from and pulled from in our show notes. As always, please be sure to like and subscribe. We are on Twitter, SoundCloud, Apple Podcast, and Stitcher, right?
yes.
Cool. I still got it. If you like what you hear, or if you have suggestions, or if you just kind of want to talk, that's cool. Talk to us on Twitter. Talk to us on any of those. If you are one of our coworkers, what would be really neat is if you came up to us sometime during the workday and told us that we are cool, and that you liked our podcast. And using those exact words is greatly appreciated. So, if that's one of you, if you fit that description and you feel like telling us in person, that's also cool. If you're not our coworker and you don't actually know where we're located during the day, please do not try to come find us. We will not appreciate it. That is only an invitation for our coworkers. Thank you.
And tell your friends.
Oh, tell your friends. Absolutely.
Tell your friends about this podcast because our Twitter has like 30 followers.
I
and also
know.
That's at Let's Unpack Pod.
Let's Unpack Pod. That's cool. Eventually, we're going to, be a little bit more consistent with this recording thing, especially with our schedule. So I think that'll be great.
Yes. So now that we have a schedule, we are definitely going to be putting up episodes every 2 weeks, at least until the end of this season, at which point we'll probably take a break for a couple weeks and then start with season 3 with the next book. But for the rest of this spring, you can expect episodes every 2 weeks, everywhere. Make sure to rate and review us on iTunes. And thanks for listening this long. Thanks for being patient with us over the holidays, because my computer decided to put out right when we were trying to Skype to record this originally in December.
Yes, as in right before, as in I'm getting set up. Great. Oh no. And then panic.
Yup.
Parents were
And
called.
then followed 3 days of asking my dad for advice and manually putting in check disk in my computer's administrator thing so that it would run checks and fix the stuff. But it's all fixed now.
And yet, she did not get a new laptop, even though I highly recommended one.
If you want to buy me a new laptop, that's an open invitation to anybody. If you want to buy me a new laptop.
And not just co-workers, anyone could buy Lydia a brand new laptop. We'll start a GoFundMe.
Starting a Patreon to get myself a new laptop.
We're going to post, hey, that's where we're going to post the blooper episode. Oh, just kidding. I don't think, are we there to have a Patreon and put, I don't think we are.
We could talk about it.
All right, we'll talk
Anyway,
about it.
That is all from us.
That's all. One quick shout out, though. I did just want to add this in. As you may know, I am a true crime junkie. And one of the things that I have been, one of the cases that I have passionately been following since probably about March of last year is the case of Alyssa Turney, who in all likelihood was murdered by her stepfather. And right now, her sister Sarah Turney is fighting for justice. The Phoenix Police Department is stonewalling her. She is having a hard time getting any kind of forward momentum with her case, including bringing her father to trial, even though there is more than enough evidence to convict him of this crime that he very clearly committed. So right now she's running a fundraiser to help raise money for billboards around the Phoenix area to try and get more public attention and to try and push for the Phoenix police to actually take up the case and bring it to court. If you're not familiar with her story, please go check out her podcast, Voices for Justice. And if you have spare change at all, please donate for putting up those billboards. Normally, I wouldn't really want to ask anyone for money, but trust me, guys, this is a heartbreaking case that I have been following. This case, I think, deserves more attention, and I do believe that 2020 is the year that it will be resolved, and we will see a conviction, or at least, at the very least, a arrest, hopefully. So just pushing out that shout out for Sarah Turney. Keep fighting the good fight. I also donated, so I'm not just throwing words to the wind. I backed it up with my own money too. And thanks for letting me go off about that.
You definitely detailed that in a previous episode, and I put the links in that one. I'll put the links again in the show notes this time.
Great.
This time with updated stuff about the billboard.
Perfect.
And her podcast.
Great. Yes, it's perfect. And then hopefully we will get that one solved. I will use this as my small platform to push for this case to be taken care of, because damn it, it needs to be taken care of. That's everything.
Yeah. So without further ado, we'll see you in 2 weeks. And in the meantime, let's get this bread.
Thank you for your consideration.
Turn down for what?
Oh, good.